and welcome! It's Brandon West Midlife, the Vin Library, and yes, I apologize for being late. My brother and, well, it was supposed to be his girlfriend coming around to play board games, but it was my brother and his girlfriend's sister. However, they did bring cake, which I have with me, so if I stop to munch some cake, forgive me, for I have cake and it must be eaten. But welcome everybody. Hello Normal Size Phantom. Hello Rahel. Hello Boris. Hello Lucas. Hello Native Gamer. Hello Maiden Hasakawa. Have I got everyone? Hello Java Hop. Welcome. I hope I got everyone there. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Sometimes envy Batman. I don't. I kind of like my parents. Hello Luke. It's me. Hi. It's you. It is time to read. That would be a very boring duel. They would, like, read chapters to each other in a duel. It's a you, yeah. It's a you in the chat. The cake is a lie. It's not. It's not. Let me give you cake ASMR somehow. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't really make a sound when I slice it. So, I mean, you can have me eating it ASMR, which is kind of strange, but that's what you're getting. Because like I said, this cake ain't going anywhere. I already eat it. It's a very strange shape. It's Polish cheesecake. So it's like probably all the recipe of a cheesecake, but it's like more solid, more cakey than like a cheesecake normally is. That's good. Good news! My package from Vinegar Syndrome today. Nice! What is that? But sounds lovely. I'm good. I'm good. We're gonna read some book today. Love cheesecake. It's a good cheesecake. It's not too. Tastes like eating ice cream. Tastes like ice cream. Tastes like vanilla ice cream, which is lovely. Good. Oh shit! I just moved one window and then all my windows closed. Now I can't see shit. One sec. Where's chat? Where's chat? There you guys are. There we go. I can see everything again now. That was annoying. Wait, I need that open too, and one more thing I need open. Because what if I need my ba-dum-bum-ch? We can't not have that. That's terrible. Anyway, fortunately it's twinning, so that's fine. Now I'm hungry. Lucky I have some tea. I have tea too. It's Tetley. Tetley decaf my tea. I love a bit of Tetley. But anyway, we are gonna read some book, and I'm gonna struggle to recap it. I'm not gonna lie, because it's been a little while. You can't see you? I can see you. We're too slow on the type. I can see you now. I'm zeroed in on your position. The missile will be launched later. Read some book. Yeah, read some book. Indubitably. So what happened? This is Letters in the Attic by Meredith Lindsey. And currently, we are 73% of the way through. So get ready for a lengthy recap. It starts with Cammy. She's moved town to Green Peaks, which is a very small town, because her dad did a drunk drive and ended up murdering two of the town's favourite people. So they ended up having to move because of all the harassment. They moved to this town. Her uncle's the principal, and so him and her aunt have got helping them settle in. She goes to school on the first day and is like, I just want to not exist. It'd be great. But then she finds friends and an art club and everything's going well. And then she decides to like explore her big new house when she comes home and finds a letter in the attic. Roll credits. This letter is folded into the shape of a burb and is on a table that like had no dust on it, which is really weird because everything else had dust on it. She opened it and it was a love letter. Ew. Then she reads the letter and she's like, oh, I wish it was for me. Because she's really upset still about her dad and all that. And she finds the words really comforting, regardless of whether they're for her or not. So she keeps the letter. Then she goes to school again. I'm not sure anything happens there. I can't remember. But then she goes up to the attic again. She finds another letter. And this time it definitely says it is addressed to her. And he will be leaving letters again every evening. So she stakes out to the roof, the attic, to see if this invader is coming in and leaving her letters every night. But turns out the window is magically opening by itself. And the bird-folded letters are flying in of their own accord. So she sends a paper aeroplane out of the window and says, "Who the heck are you?" And eventually comes into contact with our boy Zeke. Our boy Zeke is from a witch coven that got run out of the town 100 years ago. And he's been living in the forest. But ever since she moved into town, he's felt inexplicably drawn to her. And he loves her. I think they've only just started throwing those words around, but that's basically it. So he kept sending the love letters, and they talked a lot through the letters, and eventually actually talked in person. Meanwhile, a girl goes missing. And then another one turns up dead. Oh, and she goes to visit the witches, and they're actually kind of chill. They literally can't hurt humans, because if they do, they get trapped in the body of an animal. They don't just get turned into the animal. It's very specifically phrased as trapped in the body of an animal. Which sounds not as good. Hello, Red Candy Guy. I'm good. I'm attempting to get through 73% recap. So she kind of takes part in one of their rituals and kind of sees the past of them being chased out. Then she goes back to school. There's been more killings, and there's been all around the forest that the witches live in. And the principal and some of the town do remember them, because 100 years isn't that old, really. So a lot of the town, and especially the older generations of the town, still know about the witches and everything, and still think they are the devil worshippers. Their gifts are evil. You know the usual shtick. So they're starting to get the blame for these murders, while the witches themselves are trying to find the culprit as well. So she's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. She has managed to get Zeke out of the forest once to pretend to be a normal person, so he could see her art art show. And that's about where we're at. I think I covered. There's been 3 victims so far of the serial killer. And we suspect the principal. I think that's about what we got. So, what were you guys saying while I was trying to do that? I'm proud to be slinging missiles. Yes! They're supplied by Chase. He may have tied me to one of them at one point in the memes of the Discord, so that's where the missile came from. I remember there's a forest and some murders and also a magical boyfriend. Like, what more do you need? Oh, and the creepy uncle. Yes. Girl bully. Girl move town. New school. Good. Letter in attic. Love letter. Lover is witch boy. Murder happens. Uncle accuses witches. Girl can't meet witch boy. Witch boy now normal clothes to mix in. Yeah, pretty much. You run out of town for playing Forbidden Yu-Gi-Oh cards. You mean having 10 copies of Pots Agreed. Trapped in the body of Tyrannosaurus Rex. It might happen. You never know. That could. I don't think it's prehistoric animals, but like I said, the kangaroo has been a thing, so Righto. Stuck between Dwayne Johnson and a hard place. Indubitably. It's not great. So let's go to chapter 25 and find out what happened. I awoke to the crisp smell of frying bacon. Oh, is there anything better? Sunlight was already peeking through the window, and the clock on my nightstand read 8 a.m. sharp. It was way too early to be awake on the weekend, but my body and mind felt exceptionally well rested. I stretched out my arms and felt something at the edge of my bed. A paper giraffe. I must have fallen asleep holding it. A wave of emotion washed over me. Equal parts excitement that I successfully pulled Zeke into my unmagical life, and peace that I could stop worrying about hiding him from my family and friends. I just had to keep up the foreign exchange student charade for the rest of the year, and then find a way to keep him in my life for good. For some odd reason, I didn't feel the need to worry about that. Something told me that everything would work itself out if I just sat back and enjoyed the ride. Slipping into my house shoes, I followed the smell of bacon down the stairs and into the kitchen. My mother's hair was a frizzy mess, and there were grease splatters all over the stove and countertop. A bowl of eggs sat cooling beneath the microwave, and a mountain of pancakes balanced precariously on the plate next to them. I whistled lowly and hopped into my seat at the bar. "What's the occasion, Rachel Ray?" My mum spun around and handed a hand over her heart as if I'd scared her. Flour coated her forehead and bangs, and I couldn't stop myself from laughing. "You're not supposed to be up yet," she whined. "I was going to bring you breakfast in bed." I tilted my head to the side. "Why would you do that?" She rolled her eyes at me as if I was the clueless mother and she were the teenager that knew everything. She turned around and quickly threw together a plate, piling it with pancakes, eggs, bacon, and sausage. "If you weren't hungry, I'm sorry for making you hungry." I'm gonna more my cake. Cake. Ow. Now we're gonna eat with my mouth full like a rude person. Talk with my mouth full like a rude person. To add the finishing touch, she stuck an obnoxious-looking candle into the pancakes with the number 18 painted in a rainbow colours and decked out in glitter. "Happy birthday, Cammy!" she sang, clicking the lighter I hadn't realised she was holding. The candle flickered to life, causing the glitter to sparkle and dance in the orange glow. Was it October 5th? It felt like I'd arrived in Green Peaks a week ago. Somehow, amidst the craziness of learning that magic was real and accepting the fact that I was falling for a witch, I had turned 18. I was a young adult! Before any wax could drip onto my pancakes, I blew the candle out carefully and laid it to the side. My mother clapped and cheered like I was 8 rather than 18. Aww. "Thanks, Mum," I said after giving her a side-armed hug. "Don't thank me yet," she squealed. She was bouncing in place hard enough that I had to worry about the foundation of our very rickety house. "After you eat breakfast, I have a real surprise for you." "Oh my god, 18, you know what that means? She can be tried in as an adult." No you! No you! Every single message that starts with "you are" that you send, Luke, no you. Owning a gun, but no drinking alcohol. Yeah, that's America for you. Wild. Oh yeah, you can vote, but you can't drink. Or is it 21 to vote there as well? Can you own a gun and not vote? If that's the case, that's bonkers. My fork full of eggs paused halfway to my mouth. I narrowed my eyes suspiciously. "What kind of surprise?" Her smile grew even wider. She turned to bustle around the kitchen even more. She dished herself a plate and sat down beside me, giving nothing away. "You'll just have to wait and see." I chewed my food slowly, speculating. Now she can legally carry her dad's gun. That's true! I'd held no expectations of receiving a birthday gift this year. We were still hurting financially in the aftermath of my father's death. The funeral expenses and cost of moving had drained us dry, and a teacher's salary was barely enough to keep the electricity running and food on the table. What did my mum plan on surprising me with? A pie in the face? My plate finally cleared. I stood up to wash everything in the sink, but before I could take a single step, my mother jumped to block my path. She was bouncing up and down again, and now I could really feel the floor shifting beneath us. Bless. kid. Na, na, na. Yeah. Oh, no, you don't. I'll get that later, honey. Right now, we need to give you a surprise. I rolled my eyes and allowed her to drag me out of the kitchen. I'd always wished my parents would have another kid so I wouldn't be an only child, but sometimes my mother acted like a little sister all on her own. Do I need a blindfold? I laughed. My mum's smile widened even further, and I tried to rein in my sarcasm. It wouldn't kill me to let her be excited about this. Whatever this was. I mentally prepared myself for the fake enthusiasm I normally saved for Christmases with my grandparents, who always seemed to think I was 10 years younger than I actually was. Another baby doll? Oh boy! As my mum led me through the back door and onto the porch, however, I didn't hide my surprise. What could she possibly have done for me outside? My curiosity grew even more as she pulled me towards the old shed in the backyard that I'd never bothered to look into. Was she throwing me some kind of weird shed party? At 8 in the morning? The shed had been painted white to match the house, but now the paint was so chipped and peeled away that the brown wood stood out starkly, with a splatter of white polka dots. 2 hinged doors were tethered shut with a rusty-looking eye latch. My mum made a point of positioning me perfectly in the centre of the 2 closed doors, exactly 3 feet away from her surprise. She glanced at me one final time, before unlatching the doors and throwing them open in a dramatic sweep of her arms. In the early morning rays shone into the shed, lighting up millions of dirt and dust particles floating through the air. When the cloud of dust began to settle, I finally got a first look at my mother's surprise, and understood why she'd been so excited to give it to me. It was a car! I thought it might have been a car. I was hoping that with the shed that maybe she'd set her up a little art studio. That would have been really cute. A car. My mum had gotten me a car. Mum! I gasped, even as I staggered towards the gift. It was a Pontiac Grand Am. Of that much I was sure, though its model year remained a mystery. It could have been 3 times my age and I wouldn't have cared. It was a silver beauty, freshly washed and polished by the looks of it, and more importantly, it was mine. I walked around the car in a daze, trailing my fingers over the slick, cool body. I barely registered the fact that the bottoms of my pajamas and my fuzzy house slippers were collecting dirt enough to fill a garden. First car being a museum piece is a tradition, as is tradition. Mine wasn't. I didn't get a car until I was paying my own salary and stuff. So mine was shiny and new. Ho, 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 ho. It's a nice car depending on the condition. I have no idea about cars. I assume it is good and shiny. That is all we need. Who cared about clothes when my mother had bought me a car? How? I spluttered, because how indeed had she managed to afford this? I knew the financial crisis we were in. How many house payments had she redirected to pay for this incredible birthday gift? She shrugged, as if it wasn't a big deal, but her smug smile told me she knew exactly how big of a deal it was. Oh, your first car was a Pontiac Grand Am. Oh, that's nice. One of the teachers at the elementary school was selling it cheap. Lacey and Peter chipped in a little, and I'd been saving up to buy it for months. We couldn't have you walking to college next year, could we? It was also a birthday gift. Ah, memories for you, the native gamer. Memories. She walked around the car and gave me a hug that I returned wholeheartedly. Happy birthday, sweetie. I squeezed her back tightly and tried to rein in my tears. Thanks, Mum. I have one more piece to add to your gift, she said as we broke apart. I gasped at her openly this time. What more could she possibly give me than a free car? It was already too much. A piece of advice, she continued, winking. I relaxed at the knowledge that she hadn't spent more money on me. I want you to use this car to chase your dreams. Her voice dropped, thickening, but she held the tears at bay. I don't want anything to hold you back, and I certainly don't want you to let me hold you back. If you want to go to college halfway across the country, I'll help you fill out those applications. If you fall in love with this boy Zeke and follow him back to Canada, I won't stop you. Aww, Mom! Bless. I want you to be happy, Cammy. Wherever you go, and whatever you do, I want you to be happy. She ended her speech with a firm squeeze of my hands. I opened my mouth to say something, but no words escaped. What could I say that would be good enough to follow that? My mother had essentially given me permission to skip off into the sunset with Zeke. I wondered if her advice would still apply if she knew what he really was. Would she be excited that I found someone so unique to spend my life with, or would she be afraid and forbid me from seeing him? I remember getting my car, still have it. It was for being the first into college in our family. Aww, everyone's got so much wonderful memories. I'm sick of following my dreams. I'm just gonna ask where they're going and hook up with them later. That's a sweet moment. It really is. Very sweet. I looked into her unwavering grey eyes, the eyes she'd given to me, and I hoped that I knew the answer. She nodded as if she understood the thoughts racing through my mind, and she agreed. With her encouragement shared in full, she gestured towards the car and told me to continue enjoying the major part of my gift. I secretly disagreed, though. Her advice was worth 1,000 free cars. Ugh! Meh. The native gamer books until freedom means... When I debuted this wonderful model, probably well over a year ago now, I fell into the Forbidden Library. And you see this collar that has a lock on it? That's because I'm trapped here. I'm definitely trapped here. And I can't leave until I read 10,000 books. So that's how many books I've got left. I have stretched the meaning of books, though. There's a very old lore video you can dig out if you wish to see it. Yeah. Never noticed it until now. Yeah, that's what that's there for. She's trapped here with us and we torture her with terrible memes as she reads. Yeah, pretty much. That is my Vtuber lore. It comes with a goal. It's great. After checking out the interior, however, my mind returned to the present and impossible freedom this car would grant me. I couldn't wait to share my excitement with my friends. The black seats and console matched the simple tastes, but I knew Natalie would take one look at my car and try to transform it into a wad of bubblegum on the wheels like her truck. I shuddered at the thought and took a mental note to lay ground rules before allowing her to make any cosmetic changes. Imagine being a cop and interrogating someone with terrible memes until the suspect talks. It's good cop and meme cop. Want to go for a ride? I asked after completing my inspection. My mum bought me the car, so it was only fair to offer her the first drive. That's okay, honey, she said as we exited the shed and stepped into the sunlight. You go enjoy your car. I have some errands to run, and your first drive with it shouldn't be a trip to the grocery store. Where else would it be? Once I got back inside, I all but ran upstairs to grab my phone. I sat on the nightstand next to my paper giraffe, which was propped up and to lean against the lamp. I found Natalie's conversation thread and shot her a quick message. Guess what? Her response was almost immediate, and in my excitement over the new car, I didn't stop to wonder why she was awake at 8:30 on a Sunday. What? She typed back in typical Natalie fashion. If she couldn't be allowed in person, she could always take advantage of those shouting capitals. I plopped down on my bed, my fingers flying over the keypad. I got a car! She didn't put that many A's, but I feel like that's the vibe we've got here. I might as well join her in shouting. The bubbles immediately appeared at the bottom of the screen, her message being typed out just as quickly. Oh my god, seriously! Get your butt over here and show it off! And jumping out of bed, I wasted no time in getting ready. I was in and out of the shower in 5 minutes, barely waiting for the water to get hot. After drying my hair haphazardly on in a towel, I threw it into a messy bun. One look in the mirror said I was a walking hot mess, but I was too excited to care. My cheeks were flushed without any makeup, my eyes naturally bright. I brushed my teeth and called it good. But guess what? I would keep from me asleep. It's the VTuber alarm system once more. Hello! Get up! Talk, or my partner will torture you with decade-old memes. He knows the way. Someone had already clipped an air freshener onto one of the vents, so the car smelled like lavender as I settled into the driver's seat for the very first time. The car was old enough to have a real key to turn instead of a fob and button. A lot of new cars have this too still. I forget that a lot of newer cars don't have that. Brownie somehow has a toggle on crow voice. Yes, I do! It's very easy to do. It's gotta be one of my favorite voices to do, to be honest. Where is she? Mowing down your lawn. Yeah, I cracked my hog today too. Where was I? I lost my place. I relished the feeling of metal sliding into the slot, the ignition catching and bringing the car to life as I turned the simple key. I needed to invest in a keychain if I didn't want to lose it. There were tears in my mother's eyes as I eased the car out of the shed and rolled it onto the driveway. She stood back on the porch, waving and watching me drive. Goodbye, sweetie, I love you. Like I was leaving for college or somehow driving out of her life. I waved back as I drove by, taking advantage of the dark windows to roll my eyes at her usual dramatic behaviour. I was only driving to Natalie's after all. Maybe she was worried I'd take the trek up to Canada without saying goodbye first. The Pontiac had aged well, driving as smoothly as could be expected up the gravel path. The gas pedal had to be pushed almost to the floor to convince the car I actually wanted to move, but it did move, and that was all I really cared about. Once I turned off the gravel, dusty roads and onto the main drag, I rolled the windows down and enjoyed the cool October morning. The smell of the Green Peaks forest flooded the car, replacing the scent of lavender with pine needles and sap. I wondered what Zeke would think of my new car, and if he'd be willing to go on rides with me. He had handled my mother's SUV well enough. Zeke had shared the wonders of his magic with me, showing me things I'd never dreamed were possible. Perhaps this time I returned the favour and shared some of the magic of modern technology with him. I'd hung out at Natalie's place a few times over the past months, but when I pulled into her house, I saw her truck wasn't parked in its usual spot. In fact, I didn't see her truck anywhere. Did she forget I was coming over and leave to do something else? I grabbed my phone out of the cup holder and sent her another quick text. Are you home? My phone buzzed back in response. Sort of. My dad is using my truck. She didn't fully answer my question, but then the bubbles appeared at the bottom, so I waited for her to type. I'm in the woods. Get your butt out here so I can give you your surprise birthday girl. With what was with everyone and surprises today? I suppose it was to be expected on my birthday, but I made a point of not telling any of my friends when my birthday was to avoid this exact treatment. I didn't need or want the attention. Natalie must have asked someone, possibly my uncle or mum, when I wasn't around. Regardless of how she discovered today was my birthday, I figured I might as well get it over with. I stepped out of the car and took 2 steps towards the forest bordering her yard before pausing. What was she doing in the cursed woods anyway? There weren't any other cars parked at her house, so a surprise party seemed unlikely unless the partygoers had committed to hiking half a mile here. She knew the woods were banned and had been pretty freaked out about the whole situation the last time I checked. Perhaps Jason's bad influence had finally rubbed off on her, and she'd developed a disregard for authority and better judgment. Maybe Jason had hidden his car a short drive away and convinced her that a surprise party in the forest was a perfectly rational idea. All my friends could be waiting for me out there, and I was standing around and stalling like a pansy, ignoring what was possibly my better judgment. Yes, it is your better judgment, sweetie. It is your better judgment. Granny Blessed Smith, yeah. I took a deep breath and strode into the cursed woods. As soon as the trees surrounded me, I heard it. Music, coming from deeper in the woods. I walked towards the source, attempting to decipher what the song could be, all while trying not to trip over the vines and underbrush grabbing at my feet. The distance made it soft enough that the drum beat and low guitar notes could have belonged to any genre, but as I drew closer, it became evident that it was an old rock song, not one of the girly pop tunes I'd come to expect from Natalie. The music grew louder, signaling that I'd almost made it to the source of the sound. I stopped in the middle of the greenery and looked out. Sunlight poured through the half-empty canopy, shedding soft light on the leaves and undergrowth I'd been trampling on, but there was still no sign of my friends. What if the cursed woods are totally benign, are just full of trees that curse like sailors? My god, these fucking teenagers, these fucking days won't stop shitting on my leaves. I don't know. I took a few more steps forwards and noticed an overturned tree, its bark half decayed and covered in a thick layer of moss. The sound seems to be coming from out of the tree. I walked the remaining distance until I found the music source at last. A cold feeling washed over me as I picked up Natalie's baby pink phone, its speaker blaring the final lyrics of a rock song I'd never heard her listen to. Oh God! I'll keep you by my side with my superhuman might, kryptonite. Yeah! Hello, Void. You got distracted by the game you're playing? No worries. Glad you came. I just think that we were teenagers that adults and old people were saying, damn, these teenagers and their teen things. That song does take me back, my god. I love that song. Oh, I was in my feels when I was into that song. Something was very wrong. As the guitar solo faded out and the phone went silent at last, I became aware of just how quiet it was in the forest. No birds chirped, no squirrels scampered along the trees. My friends didn't pop out to surprise me. Just when I thought I'd go crazy from the lack of sound, a twig snapped behind me. Leaves rustled. I was frozen in place, a rabbit trapped in the eyes of a wolf. If this was the kind of birthday scare my friends were going to get an earful along with several punches to go around. Before I could take another step, I breathed in the pungent stench of strong cologne. I knew that smell. I'd been hugged by its wearer on several occasions. Confusion swept over me as I swirled around and faced Uncle Peter. You were 12 when that song came out? Oh my god, when did that song come out? Now I need to know. By 3 doors down. It's the debut single of 3 Doors Down that came out in 2000. Damn. 2000. You gotta look, Luke. Have a nice lurk. Be chill. I'm gonna turn my light on because it's getting dark and I didn't do it before. Even though it was already getting dark when I started the stream, I just didn't do it for some reason. 1 second. Done! And now, we continue. What's Uncle Peter doing out here? I mean, he's a sussy bastard, so, probably bad things. Revving a chainsaw. No, that would be the sound of my blinds closing. You know, you'd pull the thing, goes zzz, zzz, zzz. But yeah, I'm gonna use that chainsaw on all of you. Nah. I'm feeling violent today, aren't I? I've already threatened you with missiles, and I'm threatening you with a chainsaw. It's a violent day. We woke up and chose violence today. Are your blinds chainsaws? No. There's flowers on them. And flowers on branches on them. Not chainsaws. Hi, Cammy. I stared at my uncle in shock. Had my friends pulled him into the surprise too? I looked behind him just to see if they were waiting to jump out and join us, but there was nothing but trees and foliage. Battle Sister Briny with that chainsaw. Another quick sweep of our surroundings told me we were absolutely alone. What are you doing here, Uncle Pete? He'd made me promise to stay out the forest, and here he was, breaking his own rules. Apparently neither of us cared that there was a killer on the loose. He smiled at me sadly, his eyes softening in the way a teacher looks at a student who is struggling tremendously with a question that has a very simple answer. He said nothing for a moment, as if he were patiently waiting for me to solve the equation. I looked down at Natalie's phone, trying desperately to put the piece— oh no. Briny with a chainsaw. Hey Briny, are you able to customize the classic model to have small tears and red spots to signify that you were in a chainsaw battle? Definitely not on stream. It would be possible with some tweaks, I suppose. It'd be tricky though. Tricky. I should do that for Halloween though. That would be fun. A part of me whispered that this wasn't a difficult puzzle, and if I only opened my eyes, I'd understand everything. I stubbornly told myself to shut it. Why do you have Natalie's phone? My mouth was dry, my muscles tense, my body was clearly picking up on the situation much faster than my mind. My Uncle Peter's eyes followed mine to the phone, and he snatched it easily out of my hands before I could blink. Let's say I borrowed it for a bit. Don't worry though, I'll be giving it back soon. He smirked. Wait! This is weird. As if he'd just made a very clever joke, but nothing about this was funny. His eyes had transformed into a cool stare, that gleam of determination I'd witnessed once before, shining through again. But determination at what? What was happening here? Uncle is being very creepy. Very creepy. Finally showing a hint of impatience, Uncle Peter sighed and put his hands in his pockets. Natalie's phone disappeared into one of them, and the absence of that pink beacon in the middle of the sea of green and brown jarred me even more than my uncle's next words. She was a means to an end, Cammy. I need to bring you out here, and pretending to be Natalie was the only way to do that. Pretending to be... A memory popped up in my head. A conversation I had with Michael Varner. It seemed like a lifetime ago that I joked with my friends about a serial killer using my phone to text him. A serial killer. The gears in my mind were finally turning, squealing loudly in an agonizing refusal of acceptance. This couldn't be happening. My uncle couldn't be the murderer. Uncle Pete? I managed to whisper. His eyes softened at my tone. His smile delicate. Yes, Cammy, he nodded, as if he were relieved that I'd finally figured it out. I'm the Green Peak serial killer. I told you. I told you! I told you. Her dad had a really bad feeling about this man, and I trusted her dad, even if he drunk drived. He had a reason to not like this man. And it's because he's a fucking serial killer. Oh, lordy. He just straight up admitted it. Is this a red herring? Sometimes this would happen in books and it's a red herring. We have 24% of this book to go. So who knows? This feels like when Patrick was the detective and the culprit at the same time. Fair. There was a buzzing in my head, a current of electricity that started in my ears and radiated all throughout my body. His words bounced around inside of my head, trying to find the receptor that would accept this statement as fact, but finding nothing but loose wires, and crackled and buzzed some more. I groped for something to say. Maybe a demand for him to take it back, to tell me it wasn't true. Happy birthday, surprise! I got you. But when my vocal cords finally resumed function, only one word escaped. Why? Yeah, it was a little obvious, I'm not gonna lie. Peter brushed something off his flannel shirt, his hand unshaking, calm. Why did I kill all those girls? His voice was even, as if he were talking about the weather rather than a murder. They were distractions from what I really wanted to do. I thought they would be enough, but I was wrong. You can't serve an alcoholic grape juice and try convince him it's wine. I should have known they wouldn't do. Again, his words rattled around my head, but failed to make any sense. Distraction? Murdering young women was a distraction? What kind of black deed could possibly be dark enough that committing murder wasn't an acceptable alternative? If murder was his distraction, what did he really want? His voice dropped, and he answered my question as if I'd spoken it out loud. I wanted you. I stopped breathing. Yeah, this is it. He wanted Cammy to be his. I stopped breathing. even as the hairs on the back of my neck began to rise. Peter
New
made up for
donation
the
from
lack
Gio
of
van
respirations
Gregstern.
by increasing his,
5.
finally breaking his composure. Oh! Thank you! Thank you for the kofi. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. $5. Big Peter vibes, kinda, yeah. Oof. Thank you. Thank you. I always wanted you, Cammy. For as long as I can remember, I wanted you. The sound actually worked! Wonderful! I'm glad it actually did the thing it was supposed to. Because it didn't work for me. I actually didn't hear that. Luckily, it came up in the chat. Yay! Oh, hi, Just Care. Welcome. I wanted you. Every family visit brought us closer together, and I knew when you moved here, I'd grow closer to you still. Yeah. But thank you, Boris. Thank you so much. I shook my head. None of this felt real. This was a nightmare, because my uncle couldn't be a serial killer. Couldn't be obsessed with his niece. This was so wrong on so many levels. How did one even process this kind of information? It was impossible. Almost against my will, my mind began showing me clips of memories like a slideshow. My uncle hugging me, always hanging on a little too long. Touching me, never inappropriately, but casually and often. That picture of us at the beach with me in a swimsuit, for Christ's sakes. Living on my uncle's desktop for him to admire any time he pleased. The bacon and pancakes rolled in my stomach. I thought we were getting along great in the beginning. I got to see you in school and came by the house as frequently as I dared, but you were distant. Like something was distracting you from me. I remember that day I brought you soup because you were sick. I thought I'd be able to hang out with you, tell you jokes to make you feel better, but something was off. You couldn't wait to get rid of me. I know, it's awful. It's awful. I don't like this. This is getting too close to those stories of victims who got violated. Peter began to talk faster. I'm going to carry on with it because I expect that Zeke will come in and save the day at some point. Like, I don't expect this to go too far. Peter began to talk faster, his voice growing stronger and louder, as if he couldn't hold the words in any longer. He needed to let his story out, and who better to listen than me? I didn't take your rejection well. I needed an outlet, someone to take your place, if only momentarily. As I drove to clear my thoughts, I saw Heather on the side of the road. She had a flat tire and was trying to change it herself. I pulled over to help. Yeah. Her man will come avenge his ancestors. We'll be fine. It's okay. We all believe in Zeke. Zeke will come save us. As I talked to her, I remember how similar the two of you were when she was in school. She was quiet, sweet, didn't call anyone to help her with the tire because she didn't want to bother them, and I knew this was something you would have done as well. She didn't look like you, but something told me she could be my Cammy for a while. I hid the evidence as well as I could. I tasted bile as I tried to choke it back down. There had been a reason the first murder occurred the day I met Zeke, but it wasn't because Zeke or any of his people were responsible. In a way, I was partly responsible. Oh God, no, sweetie, no. This is the worst thought process you can have. If I hadn't given my uncle the attention he craved, and he'd taken his disappointment out on an innocent girl. I tried to rein in my horror even as Peter ploughed on with his story, his confession, whatever his word vomiting was to him. I thought I'd gotten things out of my system with Heather. I didn't regret what I did. If her death meant I could avoid hurting you, then she was a worthy sacrifice I decided to continue getting closer to you. I thought I had things under control, at least for a few weeks. I did. Then I overheard Lacey talking to your mother on the phone one evening, gushing over the fact that you'd snuck out and spent time with a boy. A boy! Oh yeah, blame yourself for being indirectly connected. I know. So question, is the uncle purple? No, definitely not. The last word was almost a snarl, and I saw something in my uncle's eyes I'd never witnessed before, in him or anything else. I was unhinged. His pupils dilated and wild, like an animal concerned and about to lash out at anything it came across. Then his eyes cleared. That demented fog swept away. He tusked and shook his head, pursed his lips at me like I was a naughty child that had broken the rules. In whatever delusion he lived in, I probably had. I really needed to get out of there. I was so angry with you, Cammy. I knew that this boy was the thing that was coming between us. The distraction that was stopping you from giving me your full attention. I went on another drive to clear my head and stopped at Gigi's to buy a drink. And there was Jessie, taking out the trash. Another quiet girl, like you. I found the release I needed. I knew I couldn't let things continue the way they were. I needed something to turn you into my arms. A stimulant. So I printed those news clips. Oh, so it was him. What a dickhead. So I printed those news clippings of your good-for-nothing father and hung them on your locker. I waited until you found them and swept in to save the day. I was there when you needed me. I couldn't stop the gasp that escaped my lips. He did what? Just focus on chat for a bit with the sound down. This section of the story's a bit too much for me. Fair enough. Fair enough. I couldn't stop the gasp that escaped my lips. He did what? I knew that committing gruesome murders was infinitely worse than bullying and manipulating me, but somehow the idea of my uncle staging that shameful, embarrassing moment in the hallway stung even more than the revelation that he was a serial killer. We had such a good talk in my office after that. I thought we were finally heading in the direction that I wanted. I was someone you could lean on, someone who could put you back together. But then you disappeared into the woods. You were still hurting and you didn't come to me. It was ironic, in a way. Peter had taped up those awful news clippings in an effort to draw us closer, but all it had done was sent me running straight into Zeke's arms. I was stood listening to my uncle speak. I felt disconnected from my body, as if I were hearing all of this through a long tunnel. It is very super villain committing it's a very villain monologue, that is for sure. I was able to mull things over in my mind, finally processing them in a way, but knowing with a cold clarity that this wasn't the time to do that. I needed to go, to run, to escape whatever evil was standing before me, but I couldn't. When I found you in the woods, I nearly took you then. Oh, gross. I hope he means murder. I hope he means murder. You mean murder, right? In a fight, right? But I resisted. I wasn't a monster, Cammy. I wanted you to come to me of your own volition. But I needed a release. Something to distract me from you until you were ready. I knew Penny was working late, preparing for the art show, so I dropped your aunt off at home and went to school. She was messier than the others. Peter's face twisted. His eyes were distant, lost in the memory of my art teacher's last moments, as if I were going to get away from him. If I was going to get away from him, I needed to take advantage when he was distracted. I noted that he stood in a way that would block my path. I wanted to run out the way I came in. If I could get past him, maybe I'd have a chance of getting out of this alive. After talking to you on the phone following the assembly, I knew things were back on track. You were distracted, but it's because you were scared. You were talking to me again. I knew in my heart that things were going to be fine with us. Then you showed up with that boy last night. I watched the two of you from a distance, and I knew I'd lost. It was over. Everything I'd worked towards was for nothing. The way you looked at him, like he held the world in the palm of his hand, it was disgusting. Peter's eyes were cold steel, with just a hint of crazy I had glimpsed in them before. His body shook with his anger, tremors that seemed to roll down his arms in waves. Did you think I was just going to let him take you from me? You don't belong with him, Cammy. You must know that. I knew a distraction wouldn't be enough with me this time. I needed you. Before he could take you away completely. Before the night was over, I came up with a plan. I told Lacey I was going to help clean up and that she should head home without me. Natalie was all too enthusiastic when I asked her for a ride home. She was so loud and obnoxious, I knew I'd find no pleasure from her. This girl was nothing like you. So I ended her as quickly as I could. Oh, I knew Natalie was gone! No! Like I said, she was a means to an end. Cammy should have brought the gun! Oh my god, the one time she doesn't bring the gun! She needed the gun! You're right. Whoa, good for nothing? I wouldn't be very nice to Uncle, let me put it like that. I just had a funny thought. What if the uncle was taught how to use magic because Magic Dude convinced him he'd have infinite power, but then he resumes on his little killing spree using magic. He can't hurt people! And then, knowing the rules of the magic in this world, he turns into an animal. I mean, that would be an incredibly long-winded way of doing this. Also, I don't think he could use magic. I think that's a born thing in this universe. I choked on the air that was halfway to my lungs, gasping as the truth of my friend's fate was revealed at last. My fear had been growing as Peter talked, as more of his dirty deeds were exposed. I had still been holding on to hope that he'd simply stolen my friend's phone, that she was home and in bed, completely oblivious to this conversation being held less than a mile from her house. He crushed my hope with an offhand remark, as if the world wouldn't be changed in the slightest with Natalie gone. And she was gone. Of that I was certain. The gods do not grant this bastard magical powers. Yeah, exactly, he does not need magical powers. Dead. Murdered by my psychotic uncle for no better reason than having the bad luck of being my friend, and the ticket he needed to get to me. I began to hyperventilate, all of my uncle's words pounding through my head. Not only was I the daughter of a drunk, but now I was the niece of a serial killer that had murdered young women because they reminded him of me. Even though their deaths weren't my fault, even though I knew I couldn't be the blame for Peter's actions, I still felt guilt of those atrocities as sharply as I'd been the one wielding the knife. A wave of self-loathing filled me once again, its presence familiar and cold as it greeted me like an old friend. I began to bow under the weight of the guilt, wishing I could take back everything that had led to the deaths of all those innocents. A small voice whispered that it shouldn't have been me. It should have been me. I should have died, rather than allowing my uncle to hurt somebody in my place. I knew I wasn't thinking logically, but I still couldn't stop the dark thoughts from permeating my mind. Perhaps I shouldn't run. Perhaps I should face the fate that was meant for me, all along before anyone else could be killed on my behalf. Uncle Peter took a gentle step forward towards me, his hand outstretched. It's okay, Cammy. We're here now. It's all going to be fine. It would be funny if the uncle revealed that he convinced Dad to get really drunk and then drive. Oh, that would suck. Though I think it'd be well deserved if he does get turned into a dog or something. I mean, dog's too nice. If you get turned into a worm. I definitely wouldn't love him if he was still a worm, because I don't love him now. Something easy. A woodlouse. A woodlouse would be nice. That's easily crushable. It has kind of... And, like, it's easy to find and crush. Like, a worm's kind of annoying. If you crush a worm, then it might come back, because if you chop a worm in half, then you get 2 worms. Then there'll be 2 of him. And you wouldn't want that. I know! I'm back. Chat crashed through me and had to open Firefox. I'm like, yeah, unfortunately, Natalie's gone. It's sad. This is not good. That's the wrong button. That's the button. Definitely not grinning about this. His voice was like velvet as he stepped even closer. I closed my eyes, allowing my emotions to overtake my mind. It would be so easy to give in to the soul-crushing depression and allow whatever was coming for me to simply come. A picture of Natalie popped into my head, her face as clear and vivid as the day I met her. She was laughing at something I said, just being a friend to me, just when I believed the luxury of friends was beyond my grasp. She'd loved me. Not in the twisted way my uncle did, but with a love so true and pure that it filled my very soul. A hand brushed my cheek. I snapped myself out of my self-inflicted torment like a current of electricity had shocked me to my core. I staggered backwards, my eyes flying open to take a look at the surprise on my uncle's face. No! I spat the word. Horrified, I'd considered allowing this evil man to win so easily. If I died, who would bring justice to those women? To Natalie. I couldn't just let him get away with this. I couldn't roll over and die. My survival instincts kicked in at last, sending blood to my extremities with a few strong beats of my heart. I had no element of surprise, no moment of distraction to take advantage of. I didn't care. I spared the opening behind my uncle half a glance before turning and sprinting headlong into the heart of the cursed woods. Can we escape, twisted uncle man? I just feel like he should get one of those Disney villain endings. That's fair. He definitely has that vibe. Oh, thank you for following, Just K. Appreciate it, thank you. Apologies that I didn't notice that until 20 minutes later. I was just very into reading. Subway surfing gameplay starts with Cammy and her uncle. I was not a fast runner. Oh no. Back in junior high, Michael convinced me to join the track team with him. Probably an effort to make me socialise more and break me out of my shell. I endured exactly 1 torturous week before quitting, and even he couldn't argue with that decision. I finished last in every sprint, so the coach tried moving me to distance. I couldn't even run half a mile without walking, so they threw me into the field events. There, I made a fool out of myself by tripping down the long jump lane and missing the high jump mat completely and nearly giving myself a concussion in the process. Impressive. Insert Scooby-Doo chase scene. Correct. Shot put, you say? Couldn't even lift one of those tiny heavy balls without dropping it on my foot. Maybe if I'd stuck it out a bit longer, I would have been more prepared to run for my life. This deep in the trees, the vines and bush were so thick that I had to bring my knees up to my chest with every stride or risk falling flat on my face. I should have given the hurdles another shot, and maybe I'd be able to jump over the fallen trees without scraping my knees across the bark and leaving a bloody trail in my wake. Of course, I needn't have worried about leaving a visual trail for him to follow, seeing he was right on my heels the whole time. It was a miracle he hadn't caught me after the first 2 steps. "Please don't run from me, Cammy," Peter said softly, only a few feet behind me. Somehow he didn't sound winded from the pursuit, while I didn't even have the spare breath to throw a "screw you" over my shoulder. As I gulped in the cool October air, its icy tendrils flooded my mind and allowed me to think more clearly than I had since first setting foot in the forest. Focus, I commanded myself. I wasn't dead or caught yet, which meant I still had a chance of getting out of this, but I needed an advantage of some kind of upper hand if I was going to make it out of the woods, and then somehow find help before he could catch me and drag me back in. Even if I had any clue how to fight, Peter was twice my size and would overpower me in an instant. I didn't have my father's gun or even a knife to defend myself with. My only chance of survival was if he tripped and impaled himself on a broken tree branch, something I should try and avoid doing myself. Or if someone magically came to my rescue. Magic. Zeke! Why hadn't I thought of it before? I was going to insult her and call her a dumbass, but kind of fair. She's got so much going through her mind right now. She's literally running for her life. It's fair that you didn't think of the boy. If only this was the Lost Woods and only Cammy knew the right combination of directions. Just follow the music, Cammy. Follow the music, you'll find him. If anyone was going to come to my rescue out here in the middle of the cursed woods, it would be him. Weren't witches supposed to be tracking the evil presence in the forest? My uncle had been in the forest for the last 20 minutes. Probably even longer, depending on how long he'd waited for me to show up. Why hadn't they descended upon him as soon as he set foot in the trees? Why didn't they stop him from killing Natalie? Yeah, but Uncle mentioned Zeke as the boy who ruined everything. Yeah. Our conversation... Yeah, he did, but that doesn't mean she clicked on asking for help. She was still very much processing everything else. Again, I don't blame her for not thinking about trying to call him for help. Our conversations, spoken through paper birds like a pair of walkie-talkies, came back to me in a wave. They could be in the woods right now, but unless they're committing an act against nature, we won't even know they're there. Apparently talking to me and then chasing me through the trees wasn't an act against nature. No wonder they weren't able to catch him with Natalie. Hadn't Peter admitted that he killed her as quickly as possible? He probably killed her and buried her before they could pick up on where he'd done it. I never thought I would wish for my friend to die slowly and drawn out, and a drawn-out end full of pain and suffering, but if my uncle had taken his time with her, maybe Zeke's coven would have found her before he finished her off. Maybe they could have saved her. Oh, this was so twisted and sick. No one should ever have to think about or wish for the things that were violating my mind. Consumed by my thoughts, I didn't see the black, gaping hole of earth until I tripped forward and began to fall straight into it. Before I could plummet into what would surely be a broken neck and death, something grabbed my arm and jerked me up to the side. My momentum redirected. I hit the ground next to the pit hard. My head bounced off the earth like when I had missed that stupid high jump mat. I love that as a callback. Zeke? I thought, disorientated. Had he found me after all? But the voice that spoke over me wasn't Zeke's. Not quite yet, Cammy, Peter chuckled, his sharp scent assaulting my nostrils once again. You'll get to go down there later. Right now, we have business to attend to. My head spun as I gripped the ground, as I tried to make sense of up and down. I definitely had a concussion this time. As the trees ceased their nauseating dance around me, and the world finally righted itself, I stared down into the hole and tasted bile as my breakfast started to crawl back up my throat. It wasn't a hole. It was a grave. An occupied grave. Says Minecraft. Oh no, 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 no. Natalie lay sprawled at the bottom, one arm thrown out to the side, the other resting heavily on her chest. The white dress she'd worn the night before was smudged with dirt, the flowers barely visible amidst the muck. It was only 2 days ago that I'd helped her pick it out at the thrift store, and now the dress was used up and ruined, just like her body. I barely registered the blood-stained dirt around her, the line across her neck that created a menacing red smile. Her throat had been cut cleanly, the blade wielded as deftly as a surgeon's scalpel. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my uncle extract Natalie's phone from his pocket. From another pocket he produced a simple red handkerchief, the bold colour catching my attention in this world of dirt and debris. He used it to wipe the phone thoroughly, removing any trace of his fingertips before tossing it into the grave to thunk uselessly against Natalie's stomach. "I'll give it back to her soon," he'd said. I shuddered. Before I could even try to stand, Peter was on top of me, grabbing my wrists on either side as his weight held me down. I tried to buck him off, tried to wriggle a hand loose in a futile attempt to claw at his face, but he was too strong. I exerted all the energy I had left in my struggle to break free of him, knowing it was no use. We just sprinted what felt like a mile into the woods, and I was spent. My uncle, on the other hand, seemed like he was just warming up. Seemed like, I realized, he definitely could have caught me sooner. The truth smacked me in the face, stealing what little breath I had. Of course he'd let me run ahead of him. Never more than a yard away, always within his reach. He knew I wouldn't try to run past him in the direction of Natalie's house, because I would run straight into his arms. So he allowed me to think I was getting away. All a while he was really leading me right to where he wanted, further into the trees, away from any outside help. He corralled me to this spot, like a sheep to its slaughter. Natalie's grave had been left open because it wasn't full yet. This grave was meant for 2, and its second occupant had just arrived. A strangled sound escaped my lips before I could swallow it. "Shh, Cammy," Peter purred as he brought my hands together above my head, with his chest directly above my nose. His pungent smell of cologne was nauseating. Maybe if I threw up on him, he'd be too disgusted to go through with this. Or maybe he'd just kill me sooner, stealing whatever chance I could give Zeke to find me before it was too late. I needed to give Zeke all the time I could manage. Needed to draw this out as long as possible, but how? Peter adjusted his grip, repositioning my wrists so he could hold them together with his left hand, effectively trapping me against the dirt. "Someone kick Peter into the sun, please! We're waiting!" It's okay, Cammy. You're safe with me. His words were contradicted by the long knife he pulled out of his sheath behind his back. The silver metal gleamed in the sunlight, filtering through the trees, blinding me for a moment. He shifted his weight over me, locking my body in place. When I could tear my eyes away from the knife, I noticed he was smiling again. It wasn't an evil grin, I decided, but rather the type of smile you share with someone you love. His eyes roved over my face like a priceless gem, a relic he'd searched for his whole life and had found at last. I distantly wondered what was going on in his head, if he realized how absolutely insane this was. How could he have acted so normal all these years, hid the fact that he was a complete psycho? How could he not see that I wasn't safe with him? I could never be safe with him when this shriveled, twisted part of him was calling for my blood. Slowly, carefully, Peter held the knife flat against my torso and eased the bottom of my shirt up. Cool air licked my stomach, and I felt my skin break out in goosebumps. My heart thudded wildly in my chest, and I wondered if everything in a 2-mile radius could hear it. Were the animals curious as to the source of the incessant beating drum? Would they notice when it stopped? Please, Uncle Peter, I gasped. Tears were streaming down the sides of my face. Freely now, dripping down into my ears. Please don't hurt me. Something flickered behind his eyes. Pain? Regret? Whatever it was meaningless. I could tell he was too far gone. You're mine, Cammy. He cooed, running a light finger along my goose flesh. Everything will be okay, because you're mine. I won't let that boy or anyone else hurt you. He brought his face back down to mine. No. Kissed forehead, okay. I tried to flinch away, but there was nowhere to go. No slack in his grip. He kissed my forehead softly before returning his attention to the knife and exposed skin of my stomach. The first slash was quick and smooth. I didn't process the pain until he was moving to the second cut, his knife carving a pattern into my flesh as easily as my paintbrush had outlined the cursed woods. A lot is wrong with this man. A lot. Everything is wrong with this man. Literally everything. A scream was ripped from my throat, a primal sound I'd never heard myself make. I fought against him even harder, but his body weight held me fast. I remembered all the times I cut myself shaving in the shower, watched the blood well up and stain the water pink, but the memory of those tiny nicks was like butterfly kisses in comparison to this new understanding of pain. I was vaguely aware that he was still talking to me, speaking in a calm voice like a mother trying to soothe her child. He was telling me that it was okay to scream, that I should let it out, but it was okay because no one would hear us this deep in the woods. It was okay for me to feel this pain because it was him, and I was his. Hadn't I been hoping he would drag this out? I was such an idiot. Natalie had gotten off easy, with a single slice to her neck, her blood draining out in seconds, but I was going to suffer. He was going to slice me up, piece by piece, until there was nothing left for Zeke to find except a tic-tac-toe mess and a freshly carved jack-o'-lantern. I didn't know how long the cutting went on. Seconds? Minutes? An hour? It seemed like an eternity when my uncle finally leaned back to appraise his work. I felt weak and drained, my mind growing fuzzy around the edges. Bernie, I blame you for asking where the murder mystery is. Shush! I didn't think that at the start of this story it would turn into a slasher story. It does literally say a serial killer on the cover, guys. But yeah, I didn't think it would go this bad. The tears were no longer flowing. My body's attempt to conserve as much of its fluids as it could, no doubt. But I could feel the blood trickling down my sides to pool beneath my back. I could feel the echo of the blade against my flesh. Peter laid the knife to the side, touching it before touching my stomach gently. I fought through the haze and forced myself to look at him, to stare into the eyes of this monster. Perhaps if he could see the hate there, the absolute revulsion, he would realize how truly sick he was. He touched my face with his palm, leaving a bloody handprint behind that felt sticky against my cool skin. I narrowed my eyes and spit in his face. Nice, Cammy. Peter rolled his eyes and wiped the saliva away with the back of his hand. He tisked at me again like I was an errant schoolgirl, and then retrieved his knife from the ground. The metal gleamed even more sharply as he brought it near my face. Shall we continue? I took a deep breath to prepare myself, trying to guess which body part he would target next. That was when I felt them. Hello, Jack. You've actually arrived at a really good part, because now the awful torture's over. The presence hit me in a warm wave. as though sunshine had somehow been bottled up and injected directly into my veins. I couldn't describe the sensation that overtook me, but I latched onto it with all my being, it was warmth, peace, hope. Stop! An angel's voice snarled. Could angels snarl? My fuzzy brain didn't think so, but this one had. I ignored the pounding in my head and turned my neck to catch a glimpse of him. The person that stood before me wasn't human. It was an angel. I realized in dismay, a fiery angel completely engulfed in flames. The fire was hot enough to warm my skin, even from my place on the ground. The flames licked over the angel's skin in a tickling embrace. The blaze reminded me of the blossoming ceremony. The bonfire that had reached towards the sky and moved in a way that suggested it was something more, something alive. Magic that would explain why the angel wasn't burned to a crisp. I squeezed my eyes shut before opening them again, my vision clearing slightly. The flames remained, but now I could make out black hair, electric blue eyes, and a look of fury that was sharp enough to kill. Zeke. I do like how the author proved that they know how to write from a teen's perspective, how to write conversations between people and how to set up the scene, just to use all of the skill for this moment. Flanking either side of him were two other teens, friends of Zeke's that I had met briefly. I noted that they stood out of reach of Zeke's flames, their own skin bare and covered in their usual leathers. Yes, Zeke has arrived! The hero is here! They each held a bow in one hand, their other hands occupied by arrows aimed directly at us. Zeke was the only source of brightness in our quickly darkening section of the forest, as if he had drawn all of the surrounding light and warmth and was concentrating it into that inferno. My uncle's body had frozen in place. His grip tightened on my wrists and appeared at the appearance of these strangers. His head began to whip back and forth between them, like he was watching a very exciting tennis match. It would have been funny under normal circumstances, if I hadn't been in excruciating pain, if I wasn't currently bleeding out on the forest floor. What is this? Peter asked, his voice steadier than I could have expected given the weapons pointed at him. Despite the pain, despite the fact I was still pinned to the ground with a psycho looming over me, I smiled. This was redemption. Drop the knife and we won't hurt you, one of the boys said. His voice was deeper than I remembered. Zeke pegged him with a look that suggested someone was getting hurt, whether he cooperated with them or not. 4 young women had been murdered, and he was on his way to his 5th. Not to mention, this wasn't just any young woman being carved up in front of them. This was personal. I couldn't hide my relief any longer. Zeke, I croaked. My voice was soft as a breath, but he heard it. His eyes flitted to mine on the ground. There was anger there, a lot of it. But something else as well. Fear. Peter gasped. I felt his recognition by the way his body tensed and held me even more possessively before he turned and I saw it in his eyes. His head swung back and forth between the two of us, his face changing from surprise to alarm and finally setting on disgust. Uncle is the serial killer. Uncle was literally torturing the main character. Boyfriend has come to show up. Which boyfriend has come to show up to save us? He's one of them. He choked on the last word, his eyes coming to rest on mine. I flinched at his inhuman gaze. The madness was back, and it looked as if it was here to stay. You're lucky you didn't come back sooner. Honestly, yes. It's been a bit of a wild one. Camille, Elizabeth Stone. He breathed each piece of my name and hissed it like an insult. Do not tell me you've been fraternizing with these animals, these monsters. I probably shouldn't have pushed him. He was clearly insane, incapable of rational thought, and unpredictable in the least. But the fog in my brain had transformed into a white cloud of hatred. Maybe lack of self-control ran in the family. The only monster here is you, I said firmly, finally finding my voice again. He recoiled as if I'd slapped him, and continued away. You fed me those lies about Zeke's community, claiming they murdered innocent women as sacrifices, but it was you all along. They're good people, better than most of the people living in Green Peaks. Why did you tell those lies about them, knowing they weren't responsible? Why did you lie about them to me? I may be a circle, but I draw the line at magic, Uncle Peter, apparently. I could have answered my questions easily enough on my own. Because he's evil. Because he found an easy scapegoat and was trying to steer the town in the wrong direction. Because he's crazy. He's an outhouse rat. But I still wasn't prepared for his response. Because they're unnatural degenerates that should have stayed dead when my grandfather ran them out of town in the first place. Peter's eyes were wide, his nostrils flaring now. Spittle flew from his lips and crusted on his chin. My grandfather worked hard to turn the town against them, even had to stage some murders to make it possible to make people see them for what they truly are. The fact that they survived at all just proves that they aren't human. They don't belong with us, Cammy. They don't deserve to live at all. Guys, why haven't you murdered him yet? You have bows pointed at him. Fire! Fire! You could have heard a pin drop in the silence that followed his statement. It was as if the entire forest was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The boy on Zeke's right took a step forward. Oliver, I thought his name was. His green eyes practically glowed in the shadows. Your grandfather killed those women all those years ago. His hand holding the arrow twitched slightly, like he had to force himself not to let it fly. He's the reason our ancestors were killed and exiled. I knew my mouth was open wide enough to start collecting bugs, but I couldn't seem to close it. So many revelations today. Too many. If I made it home alive, would my mum add to the fun and declare that she was the Easter Bunny? That would be adorable, and I like this. Of course he did. Peter rolled his eyes as if it should have been obvious. The sluts deserved it anyway. So my grandfather said. I found his journals in the storage when I was your age, Cammy. I'd heard all the stories before, but only my grandfather knew the whole truth. He saved our town when he purged it of those demons. Peter licked his lips, his eyes narrowing at Zeke. And here we are, 100 years later, with the beasts trying to ruin everything again. He shook his head and looked back at me, the fire surrounding Zeke reflecting in his glassy eyes. We can still be together, Cammy, he whispered, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear with one of the fingers holding the knife. Just close your eyes, and I'll make everything better. But I refused to close my eyes, refused to listen to him for another second, so I had a clear view when he raised the blade above my chest and prepared to stab me in the heart. I watched in slow motion as the knife came arching down, slicing through the air as it zoned in on its target. It was inches away from my chest when 2 arrows pierced my uncle simultaneously, one in his shoulder and the other in the forearm holding the knife. Peter screeched in agony, his left hand releasing my wrists to cup his bloody arm. I was completely soaked in blood now, the river flowing from my uncle's wounds, washing over me and mixing with my own pool of dark red. Oh, one second. I could no longer feel my hands, and I was sure to have bruises where his grip had restrained me. But I took advantage of his momentary distraction by shoving him off me and jumping to my feet. It was a terrible idea, of course. My body was weak from blood loss, and my head spun anew as my legs tried to hold my weight. The cuts on my stomach screamed as my skin stretched with the movement, but I used the pain to anchor myself to consciousness. The flames around Zeke vanished in an instant, plunging us into momentary darkness as I felt his warmth behind me, as he held me up, smelled his familiar campfire scent, as he kissed my hair and squeezed me even more tightly against his chest. You think the main character's gonna die? I don't think so. Light returned slowly to our area in the woods, and I watched as Peter... it's not a cup, it's a bottle. It's a metal bottle. Metal bottle. What was I up to? Light returned slowly to our area in the woods, and I watched as Peter staggered backwards away from us. Oliver and Benson tracked his movements with their bows, waiting for an excuse to pale him with more arrows. You're going to regret this, he spat, backing up another step. You're going to wish you were never born. The pain from my stomach was fading into nothing as the fog over my mind returned in full force. I couldn't help thinking this was very much like an old episode of Scooby-Doo. Hey Lucas, you were right! The villain unmasked at last, threatening the heroes. You kids are going to pay for this, and your dumb dog. That half-delirious thought, combined with a blurry vision of my uncle turning and crashing through the trees, was the last thing my mind knew before allowing the fog to cover everything in its blissful, silent blanket. Oh, Lord. Your predictions are always correct. I didn't think it would make the same reference as you did. Yep, except he's been running with arrows. That doesn't tend to happen in Scooby-Doo. I will give you that. Go! Keep going. Chapter 28. I was sinking in an ocean of black. I felt the waves toss me around playfully, the water thick and velvety against my skin. My next prediction is you're gonna be really cute. I'm always cute. Heh! Did I have skin though? I couldn't feel my extremities. I couldn't feel the tug of my hair as the current swirled around me. Oh! Sorry. Got a tickling in my throat. It's very annoying. And was I sinking or floating? Was it possible to sink and float at the same time? The water was so dark. It was impossible to know up from down. I had a feeling that up and down were meaningless here. I'm okay. I think I may be coming down with something, but I'm fine right now. It's all good. Like so many other things, time was meaningless here too. Oh, yeah. I didn't know how long I drifted. Neither sinking or floating, simply existing in that blackness. Like so many other things, time was meaningless here too. The only thing that mattered was the ocean, and the understanding that I was part of it now. That is, until light interrupted my peace. It was a thin, golden glow, like when my father would crack open my door and a sliver of light from the hallway would escape into my dark bedroom. I tried to squint my eyes against the sudden illumination, but I had no eyes either. Who opened the door? Cammy. The beacon of light whispered. The voice was warm, and I didn't realize it was cold until its golden breath washed over my phantom body. The feeling was familiar, and something itched at the back of my mind, demanding to be known. Is she in heaven? Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? Caught in a landslide. Wonderful. Feel it tickling my throat. Yeah, I think I'm getting sick. Whoa, that's just pessimistic. I don't know. I'm sniffling a little too, so who knows. Organic transplantations. Wonderful name for one. Can you read Europa: The Last Battle? It opened my eyes. Is it open domain? Open source? Open Is it old enough to be free to read? And if it is old enough to be free to read without any stuff, is it? Okay, I'll put it on my list. let me read. I will write it down. Let me go. Europa: The Last Battle. I don't know much about it. I will have to do a bit of looking into it, but it could definitely be put on the list. You're sniffling because you're a warden, not because you're sick. The Last Battle. Yeah, it's on the list. I will have a little look at it, and we'll see. We'll see about putting it on the list. The feeling was familiar, and something itched at the back of my mind, demanding to be known. Cammy, you have to wake up. The voice was louder now, and the glow was growing even, as if the door at the end of the light was growing wider. I knew that voice. I remembered that warmth, that feeling of hope, and it saved me when I was in a different dark place, one full of pain and hatred and fear. This was a voice I could trust. So I ignored the fact that I didn't know which way was up. I didn't care that I couldn't feel my body. I focused on the light, on the voice that was calling my name, and swam through the open door. I opened my eyes to a world of white. It was a slap in the face compared to the darkness I'd just swum out of. The walls were white, the ceiling was white. Even the soft blanket I was currently tucked into was spotless and white. Listening to this stream while designing an original model. Cool! I will never bring it to life, but it's good to have. It's a good skill to have in general, to be able to make your own model like that. Honestly, this is the second time my Cammy thought, whoa, everything's going to turn out fine, just for the uncle to break everything down. Yep. You're in a hospital. The part of my mind that seemed to be working insisted. I racked my brain for why I would need to be in a hospital, and the day's events came flooding back. The cursed woods, Uncle Peter, Natalie, Zeke! He must have been the voice that pulled me out of my slumber, though I couldn't hear him now. Something was happening, though. Something I needed to be a part of. I could feel it. I jerked myself up in the too white bed and hissed when I felt painful tearing in my stomach. Cammy! My mother exclaimed, hopping out of the chair I hadn't noticed, stationed to my left. She materialized at my side, placing a gentle hand on my back in an effort to soothe me or keep me in place. I wasn't sure. Mum! I gasped reflexively, even though I threw the blanket onto the floor and swung my legs off the bed. Without the cover of the blanket, most of my body was exposed to the freshly chilly air coming in through the vent above my bed. I shivered, wrinkling my nose at the paper gown I'd been dressed in. The material crunched as I moved and made an odd slithering sound as it scraped against the thick bandage wrapped against my torso. You're making a Vtuber model? Are you for hire? I'm trying to be a streamer. Me? Can try and make a good model in a couple months. Rainy on your tablet. Ugh, the one time her mother sets her free. She gets cut to pieces. Yes, Cammy's never allowed out now. Poor woman. It's gonna be scarred. She's gonna be so scarred by this. As mentally scarred as Cammy is gonna be physically scarred by this. I ignored the pain radiating from out from my bandages and forced myself to my feet. No, Cammy! My mother said sternly. I barely felt the pressure of her hands on my shoulders as she tried to push me back on the bed. She wasn't applying any kind of real force, though. Nothing compared to the weight Peter had used to force me to the ground. You're going to tear your stitches! It wasn't my mother's words that stopped me, but rather the hitch in her voice. The fear she was usually trying to hide. I paused and looked up at her for the first time since waking up in that hospital room, and noticed she was crying. Had been crying, in fact, for hours by the looks of her blotchy cheeks and bloodshot eyes. Okay, Candy Guy, thank you for coming. Have a lovely evening. Bye. Mum, I said more gently, sitting back down on the bed. I didn't have time to calm her down. I needed to get out there. Needed to figure out what was happening. Couldn't she feel it too? Electricity seemed to race up and down my body, like I was a live wire capable of catching fire at any moment. How far are we? 83%. There is still... maths. 17% of the book left. You need to rest, my mum choked out. Her breaths were coming in sporadic sobs now. The doctor said, so much blood. She collapsed. Poor woman. I know, a lot still left. She collapsed on the bed beside me, her arms wrapping around me in a death grip as her tears overflowed and drenched my hospital gown. I winced at the new pull in my stitches, but refrained from pushing her away. She felt the movement and gasped, releasing me anyway. I grabbed her hand before she could move away and clutched it tightly to my own. I'm okay, Mum, I whispered. I wasn't, though. Nothing about what happened to me was okay. But I forced myself to take a breath and squeezed her hand firmly. I'm going to be fine. I would have plenty of time to pity myself and be babied by my mother later. Right now, I cared about finding out everything that happened between losing consciousness in the woods and waking up in that room. Did they catch Peter? How did I get to the hospital? Where was Zeke? With my free hand, I tipped my mother's chin up and forced her to look at me. It was the same action she used on me countless times in my childhood when I fell and hurt myself, or was upset about something and didn't want to meet her eyes as I cried. It felt odd and somewhat cruel for our roles to be reversed now. Were you going to hell for laughing? No, you'll be okay. Tell me what happened, I said calmly, just as she had done for me all those times when I was a kid. Her eyes swarmed behind tears, and I willed her to pull herself together. I needed her right now, possibly more than I've needed her my entire life. 5 minutes of strength was all I asked, so I could find my answers and plan what would happen next. My mother nodded as if she understood my urgency. She took a shuddering breath and hiccuped once before beginning. Someone found you along the highway. She paused, as if speaking the words aloud were causing her physical pain. She braced herself and went on. You must have crawled out of the woods and collapsed there, after they did those horrible things to you. I allowed my mother to another minute to cry as I thought about her words. After my less than pleasant treatment from my uncle, I'd been in no shape to crawl anywhere, let alone however many miles it took to get out of those woods. The last thing I remembered was Zeke's solid form at my back, his arms wrapped around me and the trail of blood dripping from Peter's wounds as he hightailed it into the trees. One of the boys must have carried me out of the forest and left me by the road for someone else to find and bring to safety. But why hadn't they brought me themselves, or better yet, just healed me? Weren't witches capable of healing humans? There had to be something else going on. My mother sniffled, interrupting my speculation. No one knew what happened to you, or who was responsible until your Uncle Peter... Yes, Uncle Peter came in and lied about everything, I assume. Zeke won't be an animal now, I don't reckon. He didn't use his magic against him, he just used it to intimidate him. That means she was dragged on 5? No, she would have been carried to the side of the highway, not dragged. Otherwise, I don't think she'd be alive. Also, there was 3 witches, so even if Zeke turned into an animal, there were 2 other guys that could carry. Came to the hospital just as banged up as you were and told us what happened. I froze. There was a rushing sound in my ears, like running water. I wondered if that black ocean was about to make a reappearance and swallow me whole. Surely I hadn't heard her right. Or she was mistaken. Uncle Peter was here? I croaked. My mother wrapped her arms around me carefully this time, her other hand coming to soothe my hair against my shoulder. Yes, honey, but don't worry, he's going to be fine. They patched up those nasty arrow holes, and then he discharged himself and left to convene with the other town leaders. He was so upset over what happened to you. We all are. He's going to make sure those Satan worshippers pay for what they did. Yeah, I thought that was going to happen. I knew if this book had like 20% left, that was what's going to happen. She squeezed me against her chest in a one-armed hug, but I couldn't return the sentiment. What the actual heck was going on here? Peter had gotten away from Zeke and his friends, obviously, but to come here and spread more lies about Zeke's people after butchering his own niece? This was taking it too far. I was so wrapped up in my own thoughts, I didn't realize my mum was still talking. So thankful for your uncle, he was saying. He got us our house, gave me a job, now he saved your life. We're so lucky he heard you screaming in the woods and came to your rescue. If he hadn't taken those arrows, I'm sure you wouldn't have been able to get away. Our family owes him so much, and I thank heaven every day for putting him into Lacey's life. My nostrils flared, and the taste of bile returned to my throat. This could not be happening. Peter couldn't just waltz back into town and claim to be the hero after murdering all those women, after almost murdering me. I couldn't believe he thought he could get away with this. Mum, I interrupted. She sat back a little at the sharpness of my tone. Her eyes softened. I braced myself for the words I was about to say, but they needed to be said. This insanity had to end here, now. I don't know what old Peter told you, but he's a liar. He's freaking crazy. He is the one that attacked me in the woods. He killed all those women. He even killed Natalie. My voice broke, a sob hitching my chest. It was the first time I said those words aloud. Natalie was dead, gone. Her life stolen from this world by the hands of my uncle. It still didn't feel real, but the image of Natalie lying at the bottom of that grave was seared painfully into my mind. The red-stained shirt, the ruined dress, that bloody smile of her open throat. I tried to blink the images away. This wasn't the time to go into a trauma-induced breakdown. My mother wrapped her arms around me again, her touch tender and warm. I sank into her embrace and allowed her to rock me gently on the bed. If only my problems could be swept away by a hug and a kiss like they were when I was a child. Oh, daughter, I don't believe you. You must be sick. It was them crazy magic users that did it. You must be crazy. Yeah, I know. Yeah, Natalie died of heart allergies. It was a quick death, at least. She got a nice quick death. It's okay, Camille, she sang gently as we rocked. You've been through so much. Why don't you lie down and get some more rest, I'll be here the whole time. I shook my head and brought our movement to a halt. You aren't listening to me, I asserted. Peter killed those women. He's going to kill again. He's like obsessed with me or something. It's sick. And we need to stop him. My mum smiled at me sadly, like I was the one who was sick here. She brushed my hair behind my ear and began speaking to me slowly, like I was an innocent child I longed to be again. You hit your head pretty badly, Cammy. The doctor said you have a concussion and could experience some memory loss. You're just confused right now, okay? You know your uncle would never hurt you. He's the one who saved you. Fuck this. Oh. She squeezed my hand with her last sentence, as if she could press the truth into my skin. Only it wasn't the truth. It was just another lie Peter had inflicted on the world. I opened my mouth to argue some more, to make her understand, but the expression on her face stopped me. I could see it there, written clearly in her eyes, and the way she held her mouth. She wasn't going to believe me. No one will. A voice in my head whispered. And why should they? I was an outsider in this town. Someone who had grown up knowing everyone's siblings. Someone who hadn't grown up knowing everyone's siblings, parents and grandparents. Peter was the principal of the only high school around, held a seat on the school board, and was viewed as a city leader in his own right. He owned this town and everyone in it. He didn't even need to silence the only witness to his crimes, knowing everyone would take his side over hers. No one would listen to a snivelling teenager who had a history of being bullied, one who needed therapy to get over the scandal of her dead drunk father, thrown in a concussion and a possible memory loss, and he easily held the winning hand. You're buying a copy of the book. Wonderful! A noise came from outside the window. It sounded like yelling. A noise came from outside. It sounded like yelling or chanting, but voices were muffled by the thick glass. I remembered the feeling that had struck me when I woke, the chill still buzzing through my veins, that something terrible was about to happen. I needed to move if my mother wasn't going to help me. Then she was just another obstacle in my way. I would love to say agree with you, Lucas, but I have no idea. What? I've never played Omori. It's another one on my list to potentially do a stream for. Cammy still has the Force multiplayer, right? I looked around the small room, thinking quickly. I spotted my sneakers and jeans folded neatly on the table, but the t-shirt I dressed in that morning was nowhere to be found. It had probably been cut off by the EMT's hurry to clean and patch up my stomach. I looked back at my mum and noticed the plain old navy jacket she wore to every occasion. It would have to do. Schooling my features into the poor traumatized daughter she expected, I glanced at my mother again and shivered violently. It worked like a charm. "Oh, honey, you must be freezing," she exclaimed, immediately shrugging out of her jacket. "I don't know why they have to keep these hospital rooms so cold." I nodded demurely, clutching the fabric as she wrapped it around my shoulders. I hoped my shaking hands weren't overdoing it as I slipped my arms through the sleeves. An Omori stream would be interesting. It would be something. Yes, it's a big stream game, is it not? I have heard it's along the vibes of like meta Undertale stuff, so I don't know. I think I'll try to rest, I murmured before lying down on my side. I pulled the thin white sheet up to my chin and shuddered again. My lip trembled, and I wondered if it was too late to consider a career in acting. My mum held a hand to my cheek and gasped, "Darling, you're freezing!" And I was. The chill spreading through my body had leached into my bones, turning my blood into ice. The next shiver that racked my body was real. I thought I would need to come up with another excuse to get her out of the room, ask for a drink of water or pain medication perhaps, but my mum continued to make things easier for me. "I'll go and see if we can get more blankets, and let the doctor know you're awake. Just hang tight, hun." She squeezed my shoulder one last time and swept out of the room, pulling the door closed behind her. As soon as I heard the door click, I threw the blanket off and was out of bed in an instant. I moved too quickly through the ground, though. The ground swayed beneath my feet, the room spinning dizzily around me. I clutched the bed frame to steady myself and stared at the walls until the room finally stopped moving. I didn't have much time. Shimming into my pants, I silently cursed myself for choosing today to wear skinny jeans. To add to the struggle, my socks were nowhere to be found, and I had to slip into my tennis shoes with nothing to cover my bare feet. Yay! Comfort is not a thing. The comfort of my feet was hardly a priority at this point, but considering I had a lot of running ahead of me, it would have been nice to have them. I left the stupid hospital gown on, but tucked the tail into my pants and zipped my mum's jacket up around it. I knew I had to look like a train wreck, but I didn't even want to think about the state of my hair. But it was a step up from running around barefoot in a flimsy hospital gown. If she had a concussion, is she in any condition to pick another fight? No! No, she's not! She has horrible gashes in her stomach and probably a concussion. She is in no fit state to be doing this. But she's doing this anyway. At least no one would be awarded a flash of my butt now. Fully, if not a little awkwardly clothed, I ran to the window and let out a sigh of relief. For the first time since moving there, I was grateful that Green Peaks was a small town. The tiny hospital probably only held a dozen beds and had no reason to build a second story. If I'd been injured in Plainfield, planning my escape would have been much more difficult from a room on the 5th floor. I unlatched the window and pushed. For a brief moment, I thought it wasn't going to budge, that I was going to be standing there, half naked, trying to escape, when my mother and doctor came strolling back into the room. But then it did open, the glass tilting downwards into a clear slide and creating a gap just wide enough for me to duck under and climb out onto the other side. My feet touched the ground, and I was immediately hit with a wave of fresh air, washing away the smell of antiseptic. The sky had darkened while I was unconscious, the sun barely visible on the skyline. I estimated I had 30 minutes or more before the sun would completely set, and I'd be left to run around in the dark. Not complete dark, though. As I jogged away from the hospital, my stitches screamed loudly with every step. I finally learned where all the light was coming from. The shouting I'd heard had originated. The citizens of Green Peaks were preparing to invade the cursed woods. Yeah, I expected that. Oh, lordy. That's terrible. So we have about 14% of this book, so it's probably going to be one more stream, but I do have some bad news on that stream. So next week I won't be streaming as much, for the main reasons is that, one, I am a little bit tired. I can feel a little bit of burnout coming in, so I'm going to give myself a small break next week. I will still be doing Minecraft on Monday. I am undecided on whether I'm going to do Ruin as well, but the other streams for the week will not be happening. I'm also very busy on the weekend and will not be able to stream on Sunday regardless. So, yes. I will only be streaming potentially 1 or 2 times next week just to kind of give myself a little break. Oh yeah, also you sound sick. Hopefully it's not too terrible and I don't come down with a full thing, but if I do, it'll at least give me time to chill out and fight whatever sickness I might be coming down with. Yosh. Recharge brownie is best brownie. Yes, it is. You're gonna plug me into a wall socket for a bit and then we're gonna go. Thank you everyone for coming. This is the end of the stream. Thank you everyone in the chat. Thank you to everyone who lurked. And thank you to anyone who watches the VOD. Unfortunately, gonna have to leave. Catch you later. It's okay, Maiden Hasagawa. This is the end of the stream anyway, so it is good timing for you to go. You're just gonna miss the shilling. So just check out the links before you go, okay? If you want to buy the book, the link's in the description too, so get that. If you have not already, I would highly appreciate it if you could leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you are on the Twitch, if you can do the thing where you follow the Twitch, and then the Twitch is like, yeah, I'll give you money now. Hopefully. Yeah, stream is ending. It is over 2 hours. It's bedtime now. Old lady, you gotta go to bed now. Well, see you later. I don't think I'm returning on Monday, but bye-bye, yo guys. Give Brownie money. That gives her opportunities to produce more merch. I want a Brownie blanket. I could look into that. I won't be able to crochet. I'm crocheting a blanket, but that's not one that's going to be sold because that's going to take me like 6 months to make. But let me get my list. Let me get my shill list. It's easier. I'm really happy that I made an end stream list so I don't forget things, but then I don't open it to the end of the stream. Anyway, here it is. So, if you have some money burning in your pocket and you don't know what to do with it, and you think, well, this girl on the internet's doing her best, maybe she should have some money. You can join her membership where you get emotes, exclusive streams, Discord channel, and merch discounts. You could join her Patreon where you get very similar, but you also get short stories and free books, ebooks or paperback, signed paperbacks, depending on what tier you join. There's also the Kofi that has been enjoyed this stream, and I highly appreciate it, where we get slightly better rates on Super Chats, and it's very much appreciated. Thank you so much for the Kofi during this stream. And thank you, Normal Size Phantom. Those are the current. Keep up the good work and post regularly. Yeah, sorry, I thought that was the thing. Those Normal Size Phantom has just demonstrated all the emotes. There will be some more at some point when I get round to it. And last but not least, there is the merch store, where there are ebooks, first edition copies of my books that are not available anywhere else. Bookmarks, keyrings, t-shirts, notebooks, and a very soft pillow with my face on it. And that is all I have to shill for you. I hope you had a good time in this stream. I'll be back tomorrow with some Minecraft. Worth it just for the Sonic. Look at this guy. He's a good boy. He's a good speedy boy. Yeah, and that is it. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I had fun. I hope you had fun. This has been Briny Smith, Life in the Bin Library. Goodbye.